During our family trip, my daughter-in-law yelled at the hotel receptionist, "Don't talk to the old woman. She's just the help." My son laughed. Little did she know I owned the place. What I did next left her trembling. I'm glad you're here. Stick with me until the end of my story and let me know what city you're watching from so I can see how far it reaches. I had been looking forward to this trip for months. At 72 years old, opportunities to spend quality time with my son Jay and his family didn't come around often. When he suggested a week in Miami, my heart swelled with hope. Maybe I could finally get close to Valentina, my daughter-in-law, who had kept her distance during the 5 years they'd been married. The 4-hour drive to the coastal paradise resort was filled with Jay and Valentina talking about spa treatments, tea times, and expensive dinners, as if I weren't even there. Every time I tried to join in, asking about the kids or suggesting something we could all do together, Valentina would give me a short answer and Jay would ignore me completely. I should have seen the red flags, but I wanted so badly to mend our family bond that I didn't care. The Coastal Paradise Resort was one of my greatest achievements, though my family had no idea. After my husband passed away when Jay was just 12, I built my hotel business from the ground up. I started with one small bed and breakfast, working 18-hour days, scrubbing floors, and managing reservations. Little by little, I grew it into 17 properties across 3 states. I always kept my business separate from my family, wanting Jay to love me for who I was, not for my money. Arriving at the grand entrance, a familiar pride swelled in my chest as I saw the perfect gardens and the uniformed valet rushing to greet guests. It had taken me 3 years to buy Coastal Paradise and another 2 to renovate it to perfection. Every detail, from the polished marble floors to the crystal chandeliers, was my personal choice. Jay handed the valet the keys as Valentina adjusted her designer sunglasses, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She was undeniably beautiful, the kind of beauty that comes from expensive salons and personal trainers. At 35 years old, 20 years younger than Jay, she made sure no one forgot it. "Remember," she told him as we approached the doors, "I want the penthouse suite. I don't care what they say about availability, just make it happen." Jay nodded without hesitation. It still surprised and pained me how much he deferred to her. The confident boy I had raised was now a man who couldn't act without his wife's approval. We entered the elegant lobby, and I couldn't help but smile at the familiar buzz of activity. Jasmine, the front desk manager, looked up and her eyes widened when she saw me, but I gave a slight shake of my head. I wasn't ready for them to know who I really was. "Good afternoon," Jasmine said warmly but professionally. "Welcome to the Coastal Paradise Resort. How can I help you?" "Reservation under Carter?" Jay replied. "We should have the penthouse suite." Jasmine's fingers flew across the keyboard as she checked. "Here is your reservation, Mr. Carter. It's confirmed for our Coastal Paradise Deluxe Suite, but the penthouse is booked for your entire stay." I watched Valentina's face harden, her jaw tightening and her eyes glinting with irritation beneath her flawless makeup. "That's unacceptable," she snapped. "Do you know who we are? I specifically requested the penthouse when we made this reservation." Jasmine remained calm, though her shoulders tensed slightly. "I apologize for any misunderstanding, Mrs. Carter. The deluxe suite is lovely, and it has a private balcony." "I don't want to hear about some second-rate room," Valentina interrupted, raising her voice enough to make other guests turn and stare. "I want the penthouse, and I want it now." I took a step forward, hoping to de-escalate the situation. "Valentina, maybe we could—" But before I could finish, she spun on me, her face contorted with fury. "Don't you dare speak," she shouted, her voice echoing off the marble floors. "Jasmine, or whatever your name is, just ignore whatever this old woman says. She's not important. She's just the help we brought with us." The conversations in the lobby stopped. My cheeks burned as the humiliation washed over me. But she wasn't done. "Don't talk to the old woman," she shrieked, pointing at me as if I were a piece of garbage. "She's just the servant, the nanny. Don't waste your time on her." I stood there frozen. My mouth was dry and my heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. In my 72 years, no one had ever spoken to me with such venom, with such utter disrespect, and never in front of strangers. But what came next cut even deeper. Jay threw his head back and laughed. Not an uncomfortable laugh to ease the tension, but one of genuine amusement, as if watching his wife tear me down in public was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. "Oh my goodness, Valentina," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "You're terrible, but you're not wrong. Mom, just let us handle this, okay? Go sit down somewhere." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. This was my son, the son I raised alone, who I worked myself to the bone for, who I sacrificed everything for, just to give him a good life, and he was laughing at my humiliation. Jasmine's face had gone pale, a mix of surprise and sympathy that only made the sting worse. All around the lobby I heard whispers and saw people pointing. Some were holding up their phones, no doubt recording every second of this mess. "Ma'am," Jasmine said softly, her voice kind but still professional, "perhaps you'd like to wait in our lounge while we resolve the room situation." Before I could answer, Valentina let out a loud theatrical sigh. "Yes, take the old woman somewhere she won't embarrass us anymore, and make sure someone keeps an eye on her. She tends to get lost." Jay laughed again. Strangers were watching, and I felt my heart splintering into a million pieces. I wanted to disappear, to run from this beautiful lobby, from my cruel daughter-in-law, from my mocking son, and never come back. But something inside me, a last vestige of the strength that had built this empire, held me firm. I met Jasmine's gaze. Her eyes held a silent anguish. She knew exactly who I was. She knew that with a single word from me, she could have Valentina escorted out so fast her designer heels wouldn't even touch the ground. But I stayed quiet. I picked up my small suitcase and walked to the elevator, my back straight despite the crushing weight of the shame behind me. Behind me, Valentina was still yelling at Jasmine about the penthouse, her voice thick with entitlement of someone who had never worked a day in her life. When the elevator doors closed, I caught Jasmine's eye one last time. She gave me a small nod, a silent message that she understood. She was sorry, and she was waiting for my signal. I had built this empire from nothing, employing over 300 people at my properties. I was respected in business circles, sought out by other hotel owners, known for my fairness and integrity. But in that lobby, I was just a pathetic old woman being yelled at by my son's wife while my son laughed at my pain. As the elevator rose to the 12th floor, each passing number stirred something inside me. The pain was still sharp and deep, but another feeling began to grow beside it: determination. The next morning, I woke up in what should have been paradise, but felt more like purgatory. My room overlooked the ocean with waves gently lapping against the pristine beach. The sunrise painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, colors that would normally take my breath away. But I felt empty, as if someone had hollowed me out and left only a shell. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear Valentina's mocking voice. "She's just the help." Jay's laughter replayed in my head as I wondered if I could have handled things differently, though deep down I knew the real problem wasn't my reaction. The truth was, my own family treated me like I didn't matter. A soft knock on the door broke through my thoughts. When I opened it, Jay was in the hallway. He looked uncomfortable but showed no hint of remorse. "Mom, we're going to breakfast. Valentina wants you to watch the kids by the pool afterwards so we can hit the spa." "No. Good morning. No. How did you sleep?" Not even a nod to what had happened in the lobby. Just another order disguised as a favor. "Jay," I said quietly, "about last night?" He waved a hand dismissively. "Mom, don't make a big deal out of it. Valentina was just stressed about the room. You know how she gets when things don't go her way." "A big deal?" That's what he called his wife publicly, humiliating me? She called me a servant, Jay. She screamed at me in front of strangers. He shifted, avoiding eye contact. She didn't mean it. That's just Valentina being dramatic. Can we just not talk about it? We're supposed to be on vacation. I looked at him, searching for the boy I once knew. The little boy who would climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who would bring me dandelions and called them sunflowers, who once told me I was the strongest person in the world. That boy was gone. He had been replaced by a 47-year-old man who chose his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. "Okay," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'll watch the kids." His relief was palpable. "Perfect. We probably won't be back all day. Spa first, then lunch. Maybe some shopping. That's fine, right?" Of course it wasn't fine. I had imagined this trip as a time for family, to get to know my grandchildren and feel like I belonged. Instead, I was being reduced to an unpaid nanny. But I nodded. Saying no would only cause a scene, and I had learned long ago that keeping the peace was more important than speaking up. The dining room was filled with vacationers enjoying their meals. Valentina had managed to get a table by the window, the best spot in the house, and she was already barking orders at the staff as if she owned the place. "I want fresh squeezed orange juice, not that junk from Concentrate," she told our waiter, a young man named Terrell I remembered from other visits. "And make sure those eggs are cooked exactly 3 minutes, not a second more or less." I could see Terrell trying to maintain his composure, but the tension in his eyes gave him away. I had trained my staff to provide top-notch service, but Valentina was testing even their patience. My grandchildren, Zuri and Deshawn, ages 8 and 10, were sitting silently at the table, eyes glued to their tablets. They barely looked up when I approached. "Good morning, sweetie," I said to Zuri, reaching out to tuck a stray piece of hair behind her ear. But Valentina's hand shot out, stopping me. "Don't touch her hair. It was just styled yesterday and I don't want it to get messed up." I pulled my hand back as if I'd touched a hot stove. Zuri didn't even look up from her screen. "Kids, say good morning to Grandma Renee," Jay mumbled, sounding bored. "Morning," they said in unison, still focused on their devices. I sat in the only remaining chair, the one with its back to the resort view. Valentina had made sure the best seats were for her family, leaving me the leftover one as if I were an afterthought. "Renee," Valentina said without looking at me, "after breakfast, you'll take the kids to the pool. Make sure you put sunscreen on them every hour. Zori burns easily, and if she gets even a little bit pink, I'm holding you responsible." I nodded, swallowing the words I wanted to say. "And keep them away from the deep end, and don't let them eat snacks by the pool. They're full of preservatives. Oh, and if they need anything at all, call me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself." Each order was like a small cut, another reminder that she didn't trust me to care for my own grandchildren without her looking over my shoulder. "How long will you be at the spa?" I asked. Valentina finally looked at me, her gaze cold. "As long as we want. This is our vacation, not yours. You're here to help." Jay remained silent, staring at his phone, completely checked out. I wondered when he had become the kind of man who would let his wife treat his mother like hired help. After breakfast, I ended up at the pool with Zuri and Deshawn, trying to start a conversation as they remained lost in their screens. Around us, other families laughed, played, and truly enjoyed each other's company. We looked like strangers who just happened to share a table. "Grandma," Zuri said suddenly, and my heart fluttered, hoping she wanted to talk. "Mom says you used to clean houses for rich people. Is that true?" The question was a slap in the face.
I had worked hard my entire life. I had never cleaned a house for anyone. I had built my own empire from scratch. I had created jobs for hundreds of people and earned respect in a male-dominated field. And still, in Valentina's twisted version of my life, I was nothing more than a servant. "No, sweetie," I said softly. "I'm a business owner. I build hotels." Deshaun looked up from his tablet for the first time all morning. "Mom says you make up stories about being important because you're ashamed of being poor." The cruelty of his words stole my breath. Valentina had not just humiliated me in public, she had also been poisoning my grandchildren against me, filling their heads with lies so they would see me as a pathetic, delusional woman. "Your grandmother is not poor, and she doesn't make up stories," I said, keeping my voice firm. Zuri just shrugged. "That's what Mom says. She says you live in a tiny apartment and pretend you're rich to make yourself feel better. In reality, I lived in a penthouse overlooking the bay that was worth more than most people's entire net worth. But my grandchildren thought I was a pathetic old woman living in squalor and lying about my life." For the next 6 hours, I sat by that pool, watching children who barely looked at me while their parents enjoyed themselves at my expense. Other guests would chat with me now and then, and I would respond with short, polite answers, all while feeling more and more empty with each passing minute.
When Jay and Valentina finally returned, they were radiant after spa treatments and an expensive lunch. Valentina's nails were freshly done, her hair perfect. She looked like someone who had spent the day being pampered, and she had, at a spa I owned, with services I was ultimately paying for. "How are the kids?" Jay asked without looking up from his phone. "They were fine," I replied, because what else could I say? That they thought I was a liar and a servant? That their mother had deliberately destroyed any chance of a real connection between us? "Good," Valentina said dismissively. "You can watch them again tomorrow. We have golf in the morning and lunch with some friends we met at the spa." I watched my son nod along to her plans without asking if I cared, without thinking that maybe I wanted to spend my vacation doing something other than free childcare. That night, sitting alone in my room overlooking the ocean I had worked so hard to make my own, I finally saw the truth. This wasn't a family vacation. It was a business trip where I had been cast in the role of the help. Except instead of being paid, I was footing the bill for the privilege of being treated like trash. But as I sat in the dark listening to the waves crash against the shore, something inside me started to shift. The pain was still there, deeper than ever. But now it was joined by something else. Pure, sharp anger. Anger at being taken for granted, at the lies, at being treated like I was nothing when I had built everything. As of tomorrow, I decided, things were going to change. The third day of our vacation started just like the first two, with Valentina dictating my to-do list while Jay sat by nodding along like a compliant assistant. This time, they had a day trip planned to a nearby wine country, and I was to stay with the kids. "Make sure they have lunch at exactly noon," Valentina said, carefully applying lipstick as if performing delicate surgery. "And Zuri gets cranky when her sugar drops, so have the granola bars I packed ready." I wanted to remind her that I had already raised one child, that I knew how to take care of kids. But I'd learned that standing up for myself only led to longer lectures and more subtle put-downs. "We'll probably be back around 6, Jay added without looking up from his phone. "Maybe later if traffic's bad." As they got ready to leave, I overheard Valentina on the phone using that fake, syrupy, sweet tone she used when she thought she was being clever. "No, we can't do dinner again tonight. I'm stuck with the kids. I know it's ridiculous, but it's just for a few more days. Trust me, once this is all sorted out, we won't have to deal with this anymore." A chill ran down my spine. The way she said, "once this is all sorted out," didn't sound like she was just talking about the vacation ending.
After they left, I took the children to the hotel's Kids Club, a program I had created myself to give families more flexibility during their stay. The counselors were amazing with Zuri and Deshawn, and for the first time since we'd arrived, I saw them laugh and play with other kids their age. With a few hours to myself, I walked around the property. It had been years since I had seen my hotel from a guest perspective instead of an owner's, and I wanted to get a real feel for how things were going. That's when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. Walking past the pool bar, I recognized voices coming from one of the private cabanas. Jay and Valentina were supposed to be at the wineries, but there they were, hidden behind the curtains, talking in hushed tones with another couple I didn't know. "The thing is," Valentina was saying, "she's getting old, and old folks don't live forever if you catch my drift." A woman I didn't recognize laughed. "Valentina, you're awful." "I'm just being practical," Valentina responded. "Jay's an only child, so we're going to get everything eventually. The only question is, how long will we have to wait?" My stomach dropped. I moved closer, hiding behind a large palm tree. "And what about Mrs. Renee?" the unknown man asked. "Doesn't she have any money of her own?" Then I heard my son's voice, the voice I had once trusted completely. "My mom? Nah, she's poor as a church mouse. She lives in a little apartment, scraping by on Social Security. I've been helping her out for years." The lies flowed from his mouth so smoothly. I wondered how long he had been making them up. I lived in a $5 million penthouse, earning more each month from my investments than most people made in a year. But in Jay's twisted version of the story, I was a burden he generously supported. "That's why this trip is so annoying. We have to drag her everywhere because she can't afford anything on her own. It's like having a pathetic pet you can't get rid of." The other woman made a sound of pity. "How awful for you. And I bet she thinks she'll take care of her when she gets really old and sick." "Over my dead body," Valentina said with a malicious laugh. "As soon as she needs any real care, she's going straight into a government-run home. I'm not turning my house into a retirement home for some useless old woman." I leaned against the palm tree to keep my balance. They weren't just talking about letting me die naturally. They were planning to get rid of me the moment I became an inconvenience. But Jay's next words were the ones that shattered me. "The funny thing is, she still thinks she's important," he said, his voice filled with cool amusement. "She tells these crazy stories about owning businesses and being successful. It's almost sad how delusional she is." "Early onset dementia?" the unknown man asked. "Maybe," Jay said, "or maybe she's just desperate to believe she matters. Either way, it's embarrassing. Yesterday, she even told the kids she owns hotels." "Hotels? Can you imagine?" They all laughed, and the sound cut through me like shards of glass. "Well," Valentina said, "at least we won't have to listen to her crazy stories for much longer. I give her maybe 5 years, 10 at the most, and then we'll finally be free to live our lives without pretending we care. A useless old woman who never did anything with her life." I stood there behind that palm tree, feeling my entire world collapse. This wasn't just a casual conversation about an unfortunate relative. It was my own son and his wife discussing my death as if it were a long-awaited vacation. "The best part," Valentina added, "is that she's so grateful for any attention we give her, like this trip. She really thinks we invited her because we wanted her to come. She has no idea we only brought her along so she'd watch the kids and we could go have fun." More laughter? More casual cruelty? "Does she even contribute to expenses, Brenda?" "Are you kidding me?" Valentina scoffed. "She's completely useless when it comes to money. Jay covers everything, her food, her utilities, even this trip. She's nothing but a financial drain on us." Another lie. For years, I had been helping Jay out financially, covering part of his mortgage, paying for his kids' private school. I even bankrolled Valentina's shopping sprees. The credit card statements that came to my address were astronomical, and yet I paid them without complaint, thinking I was supporting my family.
The only good thing about having her around, Jay said, is that she's a decent nanny. Free childcare, you know. She's so desperate for our approval, she'll do anything we ask. It's kind of funny, actually. It really is, Valentina added, watching her try so hard to make us like her, bringing the kids expensive gifts. She always... I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a sob. The lies were a betrayal, but hearing them discuss my life as a pitiful joke, a burden to be discarded, was a knife to the heart. This wasn't just about money or respect. This was about a complete lack of humanity. They weren't just taking my money, they were taking my dignity and my legacy and turning it into something ugly and worthless. My mind raced back to that first night in the lobby. I had been so filled with shame that I didn't want to expose them. I wanted to protect Jay from the embarrassment of his wife's behavior. But now I realized he was in on it. He was the one who had made me the butt of the joke. He was complicit in my humiliation, and he was okay with it. I had been so proud of my accomplishments, so proud of the life I built for my family, but they had turned my hard work into a punchline. I was nothing more than an ATM, a free babysitter, a pathetic old woman they couldn't wait to get rid of. I felt a new kind of anger building inside me. It wasn't the fleeting rage of the night before. It was a cold, hard, unwavering resolve. They thought I was useless. They thought I was a joke. I would show them what this useless old woman could do. I would show them what it meant to disrespect me. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jasmine's number. She answered on the first ring. "Ma'am, I'm so glad you called." Her voice was a mix of relief and concern. "Is everything all right? Did you see—" "It's fine, Jasmine," I said, my voice steady. "I need you to do something for me." I walked back to the kids' club and collected Zuri and Deshawn. They barely looked up from their screens as I took their hands. "Let's go, kids. We're going on an adventure." They looked up at me with tired eyes. "Mom said we had to stay here." "Your mom is wrong," I said. "Let's go." I took them to the beach, and for the first time I put my phone and wallet down. We built sandcastles. We ran along the water's edge, and I taught them how to find seashells. We laughed, and I told them stories about when their daddy was a little boy. For a moment, it felt like a real family vacation, but the knowledge of what was to come was a weight in my stomach. That evening, Jay and Valentina returned, flushed with sun and alcohol. They walked into my room, ready to hand off the kids and go to dinner. But I was standing there, blocking the door. "We're ready to go out," Valentina said, not even looking at me, her eyes on the kids. "You can go to bed." "Oh, I won't be going to bed just yet," I said, my voice as calm as a summer night. She finally looked at me, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, "that you need to call the front desk and book yourself a different room for the night. You'll be checking out in the morning." Jay and Valentina stared at me, their faces a mask of confusion. "What are you talking about, Mom?" Jay asked. "Don't play dumb," I said. "I overheard your little chat at the cabana. I know what you've been saying about me." Valentina's face went from confusion to pure fury. "You were eavesdropping on us. You have no right." "I own this hotel, Valentina," I said, my voice rising with every word. "I have every right to do what I want, and what I want is for you to leave." I pulled a document from my purse and handed it to Jay. It was a list of all the financial support I had given him over the years. His eyes widened as he looked at the numbers, seeing for the first time the full extent of my generosity. "You've been lying to me," he asked, his voice shaking as he looked at his wife. "She's the one lying," Valentina screamed. "She doesn't own this place. She's just a useless old woman who cleans houses for a living." Just then, Jasmine, the front desk manager, came into the room with security. "I was told there was a disturbance," she said, her eyes on me, her voice calm and professional. "Jasmine, tell her," she shrieked, pointing at me. "Tell her she doesn't own this place." Jasmine looked at me, and I gave her a small nod. "Miss Renee Carter is not only the owner of this hotel," Jasmine said. "She is the sole owner of all 17 of the Coastal Paradise properties across the United States. She is our founder, our CEO, and the reason we are all standing here today." Valentina's face went white. She looked from Jasmine to me, her eyes darting with panic. Jay just stood there speechless, the document in his hand, a testament to the lies he had told. "What's the meaning of this?" Valentina finally managed to stammer out. "It means," I said, my voice full of power and resolve, "that you will be checking out in the morning and you will be paying your own way. Every penny you and your husband has spent on this trip, every spa treatment, every meal, every cocktail, it will all be billed to your credit card." "You can't do this," Valentina yelled. "Oh, but I can," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "And I will." I turned to Jay. "And as for you, my son," I said, "you will no longer be receiving my financial support. The mortgage payments stop. The school tuition stops. You're on your own." Jay's face fell. "Mom, please, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about, Jay," I said. "You made your choice. You chose to laugh at your own mother's humiliation. You chose to lie about me to your children. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." He and Valentina looked at each other, their faces filled with shock and betrayal. They had thought they had me right where they wanted me, but they had underestimated me. They had no idea that the useless old woman they mocked was the one who held all the cards. That night, for the first time in years, I slept soundly. I went to bed knowing I was loved and respected. And every morning, I woke up excited for the day ahead. It took me far too long to learn that being alone isn't the same as feeling lonely, and that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. Jay and Valentina thought they were teaching me a lesson when they shamed me in that hotel lobby. They were right about one thing. I did learn something that week. I learned that I am worth fighting for, even if I have to be the one to do the fighting. And that changed everything. The story we have told is fictional, but is based on some real events. The names and
Places have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. We're not sharing this to pass judgment, but in the hope that someone listens and pauses to think. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I'm so curious. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses.